Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we shall begin bi'ithnillahi azza wa jal the section that deals with congregational prayers. Now, all books of fiqh, you would find that usually they devote chapters of the books of salat on congregational salat. Why? Because congregational salats or prayers are so many. So we have the most important of them all is Friday prayer. We have the great gatherings of the Muslims, as in the case of Eid prayers. We also have the prayers of the eclipse. We have the prayers of asking Allah Azza wa Jal for rain. We have funeral prayers. All of these are done in congregation. And hence, it is important to know that Islam highlights unity. Islam highlights congregation, specifically in the things that the Prophet ﷺ had instructed us and told us about. So, congregational prayer is important in Islam to the extent that the Prophet ﷺ told us that the prayer of a person in congregation is 27 times better than his prayer alone. And in another narration, 25 times. So, praying in congregation is more rewarding. And walking to the masjid with every step in normal prayers, you gain a good deed, a bad deed is erased, and one level in Jannah is registered for you. So imagine how many steps you will take to reach the masjid. And this is only to highlight that a lot of the Muslims do not pray on time, and those who pray on time fail to pray in the masjid. Now, the Prophet ﷺ highlighted the importance of praying in the masjid. Allah Azza wa Jal ordered the believers when they are at war to pray in congregation. So imagine, we are at the front lines and the enemy is in front of us, and we're anticipating a mortar shot or bomb or shell, a bullet here or there, a grenade that may fall upon us. Yet in this state of fear, Allah Azza wa Jal has mandated upon the believers to play Salatul Khawf, to pray in congregation, as mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, Ayah 102. So the believers must come and pray behind the Prophet ﷺ, and when the Prophet goes for ruku' and sujood, only those behind him go in ruku' and sujood, and the second line, they watch and anticipate for any attempt of the enemy to attack. Once the Prophet stands up for the second rak'ah, the first line goes behind and the front line goes in front, and they take turns so that no one is neglectful. Everyone or the whole army is anticipating whatever the enemy is going to do. Even in times of fear, Allah mandates upon the men to pray in congregation. And this is in the Quran. As for the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ clearly stated the importance of praying in congregation in many hadiths. The best well-known hadith to everyone is the hadith of the blind man. A blind man comes to the Prophet ﷺ from the masjid, and I don't have anyone suitable for me to lead me to prayer. So is there any excuse for me not to pray in congregation? The Prophet asked him ﷺ, do you hear the adhan? He said, yes. So the Prophet said, answer it. There is no excuse for you. Subhanallah. A blind man who doesn't have a proper guide is instructed in order to attend the salat in the masjid. If he is living within the vicinity of the masjid, hearing the adhan is not related to loudspeakers, because this is not what was intended. Hearing the adhan, if it was given in ideal and normal cases, such as when a person lives in a village, there's no concrete buildings, there are no double glazed glasses, windows, and the muezzin goes on top of the masjid and calls the adhan as loud as he can without microphones. This means that if you live within the vicinity of a kilometer probably, or a little bit less, a little bit more, then you must and you're obliged to pray in the masjid. Also, there is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he indicated that the most burdensome prayer, the most hard prayer upon the hypocrites are Fajr and Isha. And had they known the great reward in it, they would have come to it crawling on their hands and knees. So the Prophet made it a characteristic of the hypocrites not to attend the congregational prayer. Likewise, when we come to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ intending to burn the houses of those who do not pray, the Prophet tells us ﷺ that I almost directed one of the Muslims to call for the adhan and iqamah, and I would appoint someone to lead the prayer. And I would go with men and piles of wood to the houses of those who do not attend the congregational prayer, and I would burn their houses to the ground. Had it not been for the women and children, I would have done so. So again, this is a very serious issue that Muslims do not pay attention to. And the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, where he says that there we were, and only a person who was well known as a hypocrite would stay away from the congregational prayers. So among the companions, it was a sign of hypocrisy not to attend the congregational prayer. Now, this is in regards to men. It is mandatory, it is wajib upon men to pray in the masjid. Women and children are exempted. Of course, children, if they're male and they're 7 and above, they must be trained to go to the masjid every single salat, so that once they hit puberty, they hit the ground running, rather than wasting another 3-4 years trying to convince them and make them come to the masjid. Once you manage to train your child to pray in the masjid 5 times a day, when he's 7 till he's 10, then from his 10 year of age until he reaches puberty, this becomes a habit, this becomes a nature, part of nature, of his nature, to pray in the masjid. And a lot of the Muslims, after hearing this, may jump to conclusion and say, in this case, a man who does not pray in the masjid, there is a difference between your prayer being valid and you're sinful at the same time from your prayer being invalid. So those who pray in their homes, though they are next to the masjid, indeed, they are sinful. But they're still Muslims and their prayers are valid. But they will be held accountable for not complying with the instruction of the Prophet alayhi as-salatu was-salam. So is it mandatory to pray in the masjid? The majority of scholars say it is mandatory. The textbook here says many scholars are of the view that the congregation prayer is not a duty, and this is true. But are they the majority or not? This is debatable. The way I see it, that the majority say that you have to pray in the masjid. Only, if I'm not mistaken, Imam Shafi'i, who's most prominent of all scholars, his school of thought say that it is recommended to pray in the masjid, but it is not mandatory. And this is not the case. The most authentic opinion is that the vast majority say it is mandatory to pray in the masjid for men, and the hadiths that we had mentioned earlier prove that without any doubt. Now, here the section speaks about who is to lead the salat. The Prophet told us, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the best or the most deserving person to pray or to lead the prayer is the one who memorizes most of the Quran. And this is when we come to a situation where we have a number of people in a public place and we have to evaluate which one to lead the prayer. But when we are in a masjid, then by default the imam who was appointed by the authorities, so whether the authorities is the government or the committee that runs the masjid, as long as he was appointed, then if those behind him memorize the whole Quran, doesn't matter. He is the one who's supposed to lead the prayer because it's his duty and it is his masjid. In general cases, as if we are at work or, for example, at an airport or in a public place and there are 5 of us, who leads a prayer? One says, I memorize the full Quran, and he memorized it more than anyone else. We say, you go ahead and lead. A young person can also lead elders. There's no problem in that. And also, a blind person can lead. It's not a necessity that he is having his full senses, because Abdullah ibn Maktoum, may Allah be pleased with him, the blind man, used to be appointed by the Prophet ﷺ whenever the Prophet went for jihad. He used to appoint him to be the ruler of Medina and the leader of the prayers. And the difference of niyyah does not impact the salat. Meaning, if I'm praying my fard prayer and someone behind me is praying a voluntary prayer, there's no problem. If I'm praying a voluntary prayer and someone behind me is praying his fard prayer, there's no problem in that either. And likewise, a traveler can be an imam and lead a residing person. The traveler is going to shorten his prayer by default, but the resident, after the second rak'ah is over and the imam gives the tashahhud, the salam, the resident has to stand up and pray his third and fourth rak'ah. And the opposite is true. If the imam is a resident, in this case, a traveler praying behind him must complete the prayers and pray full 4 rak'ah. Even if the traveler misses 3 rak'ahs, like I'm a traveler and I come into a masjid and the imam who's a resident is in the third or in the fourth rak'ah. So I say Allah. The answer is no. You have to pray 3 full rak'ahs because your imam was a resident, and this was attributed to Abdullah ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father. And also, if the imam has performed tayammum, either because he is unable to use water due to an illness or due to lack of water, but behind him the followers are all on wudu with water, so is he of a lesser degree? And we say to him, well, because you did tayammum, you have to retreat and let someone else lead the salat? No, there's no problem in that, none whatsoever. Okay, what about women if they decided to go to pray? Would that be sufficient? Would that be accepted? The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to women that their prayers is better if they pray or offer it at home. But he also instructed and ordered the men not to prevent women if they want to go to the masjid. So now, in one hadith, the Prophet prohibits men who are the guardians of women to prevent women from attending the congregational prayer in the masjid. لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله. Okay, but at the same time, though women have the permission to go, the Prophet said that praying in their homes is better for them. So does this cascade also to the haram? We know that praying in the haram, one prayer is equivalent to 100,000 prayers elsewhere. So if a woman goes for umrah with her husband and she wants what's more rewarding, she likes going down to the haram and praying in the masjid and seeing the Kaaba, etc., but she wants what is good for business. Praying in your hotel room is far better for you and greater for your reward. And this was mentioned clearly in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a woman came to him and said, "O Prophet of Allah, I love to pray in your masjid." So he said to her, "I know that you love to pray in my masjid, but praying in your house is better than praying in my masjid. And praying in your home is better than praying in your house. And praying in your inner home is better than praying in your home. And praying in your chambers is better than praying in your inner home." So the Prophet is making it tighter and tighter to indicate that a woman's prayer, far away from people's gaze and the possibility of non-mahram seeing her, is much better than praying in the masjid of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is 1,000 times better than praying elsewhere other than the masjid of Mecca. So now we come to the first congregational prayer in our textbook, the most important one of all. It is so important that Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed a surah by the name of Friday. And not only that, the Prophet ﷺ has warned people from taking Friday as something elective, something voluntary. He says, whomever skips 3 continuous Fridays, Allah would seal his heart. A'udhu billah. If Allah seals your heart, this means that when you see, I'll tell you what does that mean. Sometimes you see people hearing the adhan in Muslim countries, walking in front of the door, going and washing their faces and leaving, walking away. Hearing the imam reciting in Maghrib, and they're outside of the masjid chit-chatting, smoking until the salat is over, and they don't pray. You know, what did I do? They don't even sense or feel that they have done anything wrong because their hearts had been sealed. Nasallah al-afiyah. We ask Allah for protection from such hard sealed hearts. So Friday is very important. It is obligatory to every male, and the ayat is crystal clear. Ayah 9 in verse 62. You can check it out in your Quran, Mus'haf. And the Prophet had said and mentioned alayhi that attending Friday prayer is an obligation to everyone who has attained puberty. So this is a must. It's not something that, okay, I'll do it one Friday and skip one Friday, or it is highly recommended. It's a communal obligation. No, this is an individual obligation, not a communal obligation. And on whom it is binding. So there are conditions. Whomever these conditions are fulfilled in him must attend the Jumu'ah. The number one, Muslim, which means non-Muslims are not allowed to attend. Sheikh, we have non-Muslims in our community who wish to enter the masjid and pray with us. We say this is up to the imam's own ijtihad and opinion. If the imam believes that these people are really interested in learning or seeing how Islam is being practiced, no problem in them entering the masjid, but they should remain at the back of the masjid, not engage in the rows. I've seen some people interested in Islam and the Muslims put them and make them stand with them in the row. This is wrong. This is not permissible and it is wrong. He's a non-Muslim. He cannot stand with the Muslims in a row, as he would disconnect that row. It is an obligatory ritual upon males, which means that women, and this means that slaves are not obliged to attend because they require the permission of their masters. And it is mandatory upon those who are sane. So people who have dementia, people who have severe case of Alzheimer, they do not know day from night, they do not recognize their own children or their own close relatives, and they're unable to concentrate or think properly, they are classified as insane, in the meaning, which means that Allah has uplifted the pen so that they're not accountable. It is mandatory upon men who had reached the age of puberty, and it is also important to know that it is mandatory upon residents. So travelers are not obliged to conduct Friday prayers. And we have to clarify this a little bit, because I've seen even among some of the da'is that say that Friday is not mandatory. When we go for a conference, for example, in a foreign country, and it's time for Jumu'ah, I've heard some of the du'at say that Friday is not mandatory upon travelers. And this is an understatement, which unfortunately shows you that not all du'at are scholars, are knowledgeable. Yes, they may have a BA or a master's degree, or sometimes even PhD in Islamic studies. But this does not mean that they are infallible. It doesn't mean that what they say is 100% true. You have to cross-examine everything anyone says, no matter how much. Sheikh Asim, yes, you don't have to go and search and look because you're a layman. Even if you search, you'll be more confused and most likely you won't understand what you're reading because it's not your profession. But if you're a student of knowledge, you have no right in taking what I say for granted because I'm a human being. I may misunderstand things. I may misquote things. I may make errors. So these da'is, I was with them in one of the countries. It was time for Friday. We didn't have someone to take us to the khutbah. So one of them said, it's not mandatory to pray. And in a sense, he's right, but he's not. And I'll tell you the reason. Scholars all agree that travelers cannot pray Friday prayer. So the da'i's words are correct. No, wait, I'll explain to you. What do they mean by this? What is their consensus on? They say that if we are a group of travelers, if we are nomads, so we are 500 people living in tents, moving from one place to the other, looking for grass for our herds to graze. And we're 500. So it is Dhuhr time, it's Friday. Shall we make a Friday? Nope. Oof. Sheikh, we're 500 people. Yes, but you're not residing. Jumu'ah is not to be prayed except by those who reside. And because you are not a resident, if I'm a sailor and I travel 5 months at sea, journeys are a month or two long, I never pray Jum'ah. I don't pray Jum'ah on ship. Though we have a full-fledged masjid, we have 200 crew members and passengers and the whole 9 yards. No Jumu'ah for us. Okay, so where did the da'i go wrong? The da'i went wrong when he thought that because he is a traveler and he shortens prayers, that he can skip Friday. And the masjid in that city he is passing through calls for the salat, he moves on. He's a traveler. But if he's staying in a city or a town and they have masjids and they're calling for Jumu'ah, he falls under the ayah إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. Whenever, O you who believe, the call for Jumu'ah is given, you must abandon trade and walk briskly to the masjid. You have to go and pray. So, yes, a traveler doesn't call others, come, let's pray Jama'ah. We're 50 of us, we're 20 people. No. But if there's a masjid and he is staying in that town, he has to go and answer the call for prayer. Okay. What is the timing of Jumu'ah? Sheikh, that's a weird question. I know, but we have to ask it so that we learn. And this is why we're here. The vast majority of scholars, the school of Abu Hanifa, the school of Malik, the school of Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, all agree that the time of Jumu'ah is the time of Dhuhr. This is what we all know. The Hanbali school of thought differ. And they say that the time of Dhuhr is the same as the time of Eid. Whoa, that's a lot. Time of Eid, it's after sunrise by 15 minutes. So do you mean to tell me that I can pray Friday when it is 7:30 a.m.? Well, we have to look at the origin of this. First of all, the safest is to go with the majority. The safest is to pray Jumu'ah exactly at the time of the adhan of yesterday's Dhuhr. So if the adhan of Dhuhr is 12:30 every single day, on a Jum'ah, the Imam gives the khutbah, says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh at 12:30. This is the most convenient opinion. That you can offer it earlier. If you say that I'm going to offer it at the time of Dhuhr, they'll say no problem. So where did the Hanbali get what they say from? First of all, we have to know that this is an erect object. The sun rises from the east. As it rises from the east, the shade to the west is decreasing bit by bit. It's decreasing a little bit as the sun goes to the zenith, the middle of the sky. Once it is erect on the erect object, we don't have shades. This is a time of prohibition. The moment the sun goes a little bit to the west and there's a shade to the east, this is called in Islam, memorize this, write it down, al-zawal, Z-A-W-A-L. Of course, this is lam shamsiyah, and we don't pronounce it when we attach it to the word. So we say az-zawal. We don't say al-zawal, as in the word ash-shams. We don't say al-shams. This is why they call this al-shamsiyah. In contrast to al-qamariyah, the one dealing with moon. So the L is obvious, as in the name of al-hakeem. So al-hakeem, the L here is audible. You can hear it, you can say it and pronounce it. So what is az-zawal? Az-zawal is the time where Dhuhr begins. Now, why did I bring this up? To tell you where the Hanbali school got this idea that Friday is much earlier. In Sahih Muslim, from the hadith of from the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, and other scholars and companions, they all said that we used to attend the Friday prayer, the khutbah, the Friday prayer. This means that the Prophet offered the khutbah and the prayer at least 20 minutes before the time of Dhuhr. And this is why these scholars of the Hanbali school thought that, if we can make it half an hour or an hour before, we can make it 2 hours, 3 hours, because this is a time where the prayer of Eid starts and it's open until Dhuhr prayer, etc. This is how they thought, and they came up with this idea. However, the most authentic opinion is the opinion of following the authentic hadith. So Jabir ibn Abdullah, the hadith is in Muslim, other companions describe that they used to pray Jumu'ah and leave, and the zawal is not there or barely about to begin. This is the most authentic opinion, which made Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on their souls, say that you can pray Friday prayer half an hour to maximum an hour before az-zawal. And this is what I actually do throughout the whole year. Nowadays, Dhuhr in Jeddah is approximately 12:37. So I go to the minbar, to the pulpit, and I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah at 12:15 fixed. And I've been doing this for the past like 20 years, 25 years. Who's counting? And I finish salat and leave the masjid while everyone around us is still delivering the khutbah, not the salah. And I chit chat with the worshippers, and for 10 minutes I get into my car, I drive home, and the salat is still ongoing in the haram of Mecca. So you say, Sheikh, but why don't you be safe rather than sorry? Well, simply because I'm following the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm safe when I'm with the Prophet ﷺ. And secondly, when I come to the masjid and I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, the masjid is fully packed before I enter the masjid, and the people are standing at the doors from restaurants and be the first to be at that restaurant when it opens. Of course, these are in Islamic countries where shops close. Alhamdulillah. If you're in Europe, then you won't have this advantage. Therefore, the most authentic opinion is that you have to begin the salat or to begin Jum'ah by half an hour to an hour, and that is the most authentic opinion. Do we have the questions? Let me check. Not yet. So I hope the admins send us the question for today. Okay. Where have we? The sermon. Now, what is the sermon? Jumu'ah prayer is different than any other prayer, specifically the 5 daily prayers, because it has 2 sermons preceding it. And these 2 sermons are a condition, meaning that if I, as an imam, enter the masjid and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and the imam gives, and the muaddin gives the adhan, and then he gives iqamah, and I pray 2 rak'ah of Jumu'ah as usual, the Jumu'ah is invalid. Some scholars even went further to say that the sermons, the 2 sermons, are a compensation for the missing 2 rak'ahs. Now, whether this is true or not, it's regardless, but we have to pay attention to the fact that it is an essential pillar of the Friday itself that people must not leave no matter what. So I think we will stop here because the questions have arrived. Let me just put a mark. Recommended in respect of the sermon. What is al-mustahabbat in that? So let us go to the questions, and we have like 27 questions, which is a lot, but let us see what Allah Azza wa Jal helps us in. Ramla says, what is the sunnah way for tashahhud? We have to move our fingers since we sit in tashahhud till before salam, or we have to only point our fingers when we sit for tashahhud and move it only in dua after durood, after salutation, which is in the last tashahhud, or we just need all of these, or we've explained this before. We'll explain it once again, and I know I'm going to get same questions later on. Wa'il ibn Hujr said, the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he sat for tashahhud, he used to point his finger and he used to move it, making dua with it. So Shaykh al-Albani says, you have to, from the beginning, when you sit, you say, التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد the whole 9 yards. And even when you say اللهم نعوذ بك من عذاب جهنم وعذاب القبر, and even when you say ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة, اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن, everything you want to do, just keep on moving it until you make salam. That's it. Number 2, Rayyan. What is the ruling of facing or giving the back to the Qibla in the bathroom? There are 7 to 8 different opinions of scholars, as mentioned by Imam al-Shawkani in his beautiful book Nail al-Awtar, and other scholars as well. Without going into details, the hadith is obvious that it is prohibited. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him, said that we went to Syria and we found that the bathrooms were built in the direction of a Kaaba. So we used to tilt and seek Allah's forgiveness so that we won't be facing or giving our backs to the Qibla. The most authentic opinion, and give your back to the Qibla when you are in the open, where you are outdoors. And if you are indoors, there's a barrier, there's a wall in front of you, then this is not prohibited, yet it is not recommended. There are scholars who said it is totally prohibited to give your back or to face the Qibla while answering the call of nature, whether you're indoors or outdoors. But it seems that it's more likely to be permissible indoors, especially if you have nothing to do with it. You were forced to be in such a situation. You're not the one who built it. Of course, building it intentionally while knowing that is sinful, and Allah knows best. Haslin, if one forgets to do sujood al-sahu and started to pray next set of rak'ah, what to do in this case? Nothing. The place of the sujood, the prostration of forgetfulness, is gone. So there's nothing for you to do. The prayer is valid, inshallah. Aziz says, eagerly waiting for your lecture. May Allah bless you. Ameen. Administrators, this was not a question. Okay. Who's this? Lyric. Shala says, if a woman has had a bad past with sins, tattoos, etc., and now she's pious, devoted in Islam, when one now proposes marriage to her, should she tell him about the tattoos she had because she's now an niqabi and obviously he, the man who proposes, cannot see? May Allah bless you, Sheikh. Ameen. The defects, the things that may impact and affect the marriage negatively, must be disclosed to the suitor so that he can make up his mind. Sins are not permissible to be disclosed. Meaning, if a woman had a prohibited sexual relationship, if a proposal comes, it is totally prohibited for her to mention this to any soul, not even hinting it, not even accepting to be asked about it. But if she has something that may repel the husband from enjoying her, like if she has vitiligo, I don't know if I'm saying it right or not, these patches of white skin that may appear, if she has a chronic no doctor is able of fixing, these repel the husband and repel the wife if the husband has them. So these have to be disclosed to the potential spouse so that they enter into marriage while being able to know this. If a woman has tattoos all over her hand, this is, with all due respect, disgusting. So definitely she has to inform the women folk who came to propose with the man, his mother, his sister, by showing them that this is. But if she has like a tramp stamp or something in her ankle, this is not repulsive. This doesn't make a husband stay away from his wife. So I hope this answers your question. Fida, water is pure and nothing makes it impure. Can you explain this hadith? Is it a hadith? Al-ma'u la yunajjisuhu shay'un. This is true. And this is understood with other hadiths. So scholars say water is pure and nothing makes it impure, quote unquote, unless one of the three characteristics change with an impurity, and that is the taste, the smell, or the color. This hadith was stated in Bi'r Duba'a, where there was a well in Medina, and some scholars say that we could stand until our chest, that were clearly impure. Maybe corpses of a dog, some tampons or diapers or whatever. So the Prophet was asked about the water coming from that well. So the Prophet said, water is pure and nothing makes it impure, to indicate to them that the water is a lot, like in the case of a lake, of a river, of an ocean, of a sea. It's a lot. Even if you urinate in it, it's not going to impact it. So you understand this hadith by combining to it other hadiths, and the rule that the consensus of all scholars is upon, which is that the water is pure unless one of the three characteristics has changed by or with an impurity. Fatima, if we performed sajdat al-sahu after or before taslim, then when would we make the dua before taslim? Should we make it after performing sajdat al-sahu? The answer is no. If you're performing sujood al-sahu before the taslim, then it should be the last thing you do. So you say your tashahhud, your salutation, seeking refuge in Allah from the four things, and ask whatever Allah you want to ask Allah. And just before concluding your salat, you make two takbir, two sujood, assalamu alaikum wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. End of story. And if you're going to make it after the salam, likewise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Allahu Akbar twice, then assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Lyric says, if one say the dhikr of morning and evening, should he or she say all the prescribed or just some of it? It's like saying, if someone is offering me money, should I take 5,000 or 100,000? He's offering 100. It's up to you. You want to take 5,000? Take 5,000. You want to take 10? Take 10. After salat, you want to say dhikr, 10%, it's your wallet that you want to fill up or keep half empty or not use at all. Rabia bint Iqbal says, what does the Imam say after the Iqamah, before starting the Salah? Istawu, aqimus. Okay, you know that. If you're asking for translation, the Imam is addressing the congregation. Istawu, straighten your rows and stand still. Aqimu sufufakum wa'tadilu, make your rows straight and stand still. La takhtalifu fatakhtalifa qulubukum, do not differ, so that your hearts would not be filled with enmity and differ with one another. La tadharu furujatin lishaitan, do not leave gaps for shaitan to enter between you, etc. Shahada. Is there any authentic hadith regarding Raf' al-Yadayn? The mosque in which I pray my salat, almost no one does this. Should I do it or skip it while praying at that masjid? Of course, there are numerous hadiths about Raf' al-Yadayn, and the most authentic is in Sahih al-Bukhari, which is the highest grade of authenticity, narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father. So this is a proven sunnah. And as stated before, if you don't do it, your prayer is valid. But if you can do it, you have to, you should, because this is a sign of your love to the Prophet ﷺ and following him. Lyric, again, an evening, should he say all the prescribed? I've finished this. What is this? Okay, maybe it's my bad. Maybe it's repeated. No, it is repeated. That's a mistake from the admins. No problem. Rabia says, please explain what is the game that one is not supposed to hunt while he's in the state of ihram. Any game. You're not allowed to hunt any prey, whether it's or flies on in air, is haram for you to hunt. You can only fish. Whatever lives in water, you can take that without any problem. Shahada says, is there any offspring of Hazrat Muhammad still alive? In our country, a man claims himself as the offspring of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course they are. There are so many of them, because we know that the grandsons of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, used to marry a lot, and they had a lot of children. Al-Hussein, I think, had like 50 offspring. He married so many women to the extent that his father, may Allah be pleased with him and with his son Al-Hussein, used to go to tribes and say, my son divorces, don't give him in marriage. And they used to say to him, even if he divorces, we want any connection to the Prophet ﷺ through him. So there are so many. In Arabia, there are well-known families that have their lineage detected to the Prophet ﷺ. So there is Al-Saqqaf, there is the Alawi, there is Al-Mihdar, there is Al-Jifri, there is Al-Sharif, there is Al-Shambari, also from the Ashraf, there is Al-Barakati, also from the Ashraf. So many tribes and families attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. Fatima says, please explain, when making dua, can't we use Asma'ullah al-Husna, meaning translated in our language? Jazakumullahu khairan. When you call Allah Azza wa Jal, you call him by his beautiful names, not by the translation. You don't say, oh God, give me this, oh most forgiving, forgive my sins. These are not Allah's names. These are a translation. You say, Ya Allah, give me this or that. Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghafir, Ighfirli, forgive me my sins. So you use Allah's beautiful names in Arabic and not in other languages, but you can ask the dua in other languages. I hear lots of Muslim perform salat in churches. Please explain if this is allowed in Islam to do that if no mosque around in the area. If the people of the church allow Muslims to pray inside the church, and this is a big and, capital A-N-D, underlined with 2 lines, highlighted, italic, bold, and change the font as well, and the color. And there are no crosses in the church. There are no idols, statues, then yes, prayer there is permissible. Otherwise, nope, you should not pray there. And Number 16, Ramla, and we conclude with this inshallah. Sir, we know that ruqya has been done for cure, healing, and not for protection. Because of protection, we do dua. Then, if person is suffering from waswas, why it is been said that he can do ruqya for it when we know ruqya is only the cure and not for protection? Ramla, when a person has waswas, is he considered to be sick or not? OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is it an illness or not? Someone who's having hallucination, something in his head saying to him, you should kill that man. No, you should not kill that man. You should do this. No, you should not do that. And he's hallucinating inside of his head. He's hearing voices. Is this an illness or not? The answer is, of course, it is. If it is, then there's no problem in doing ruqya, because this is not being done to protect. This is being done to heal, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. This brings us to the end of today's session. Hope to see you inshallah next Monday, and until then I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.